All right, and we are live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. This is season 2, episode 6. Where does the time go? I'm your host, Myki Angeline, on the Bad Filipino podcast. And I always say I'm excited, but I really am excited that I've got Mr. Christophe here in the chat room on the show. Christophe!
Yeah, what's up? How
And
are
you know
you?
what? Oh my gosh. And you know what's so cool is that because it's viral and virtual and online, you're somewhere I wish I kind of was because you just told me you're in a cabin. There's snow behind you. You've got
Yeah,
this nice, cozy fire. You've
yep.
had bears on your porch because you're in a cabin.
I'm in a cabin in the mountains in the forest
That
in
is so crazy.
in California. I'm close to Los Angeles actually, but yeah, I am in the wild wilderness for sure.
Oh my gosh. And
It's
okay, wait,
beautiful.
when did you get there and how long are you there?
I got here a couple weeks ago and I don't know how long I will be here. I've been displaced a couple times this year because of the 2020 and the crazy year.
Mm.
Life has kind of not been in my control, and so yeah, I've had to bounce around a little bit, and this is where I'm bouncing at the moment.
That's not a bad place to
It's
bounce.
not a bad place to bounce.
No.
I'm getting better at making wood stove fires to keep warm, and I'm in a rustic cabin, and where else would be better than in a cabin that's away from people, and I'm not really going to get sick out here, so this is
You're
fun.
not. There's
Yeah,
a positive. You catching COVID would be a miracle, and
yeah,
you're not gonna. So that's good. So all right, we have you on the show because you and I actually met during the podcast movement conference that happened in October. Was that
yeah.
your first time attending? Because that was my first time.
That was my first time legally attending. I attended in February in Los Angeles for like a day and a half. A friend of mine
Ah.
had some credentials that he wasn't going to use anymore and handed them off. I didn't know that the podcast. I didn't know what it was, so it was all new to me in February.
Aha. So this is okay. So then you kind of know the ropes in a sense. Was it crazy, awesome in person?
It was, but I really, really liked the virtual element because I I'm very social and I will go up to people at a bar and talk to them, but I feel like I was introduced to people in the mixer, like the virtual speed dating, speed networking
That was so
thing.
amazing.
That was
That's how we really connected.
I
I mean,
loved that. And I
that was
and
so good.
that was so good. And I felt like I met people that I might not have walked up to in a bar situation.
That's a
And
really good point.
good for them for making it like on the in the front, maybe a little bit awkward, but no, everybody was super nice and accommodating and wanted to talk about themselves and listen to you, and it was great.
It was such a community for podcasters, which you saw in my intro, which I need to update, but
That's
my
a
forte.
sweet intro, by the way.
Well, thank you.
I love the images of you with so many. I'm like, oh, she's introduced interviewed some heavies. Dang.
I have, right? And but see, most of that was at the NAM convention, which is
Yeah,
in Anaheim. So I'm used to doing these where there's like 100,000 people over like 4 days, and you're trying to make that workshop and that seminar and that meet and greet, right? And
yeah.
so I almost had a feeling that the podcast movement probably was similar to that in person. So this being the first time and it being virtual, I feel you on that one. It was so much easier to figure out which ones, and I would even sometimes I would navigate more than one room
Yep.
on those workshops, like from my tablet and my laptop, to figure out which one I could get more information from and connect
Yeah.
with.
Yep.
And then like you said, that the speed networking, which was run a lot like the speed dating, I thought that was hilarious because you just wait, like it just does the spin random and just throws you with somebody. Then you have 5 minutes to figure out, and I clicked with everybody that
Me too.
right? And then, like you said, everyone is so giving and helpful and
Yep.
supportive, and we don't even know
They're
each other.
interested too. Yeah.
Yes. That was amazing. And I realized for all that I've ever done with broadcasting, with radio, with TV, and even podcasting before this, I don't really know as much as I need to know, and that
Yeah.
opened my eyes and my mind. So, and then meeting you, of course, because you are. So, is the term little person? That's correct.
Yeah, little person works. Dwarf is also politically correct. I know that can sometimes sound awkward to people that might not be comfortable with it, but I think the most PC term is short statured.
Okay, that's
Um,
a lot of syllables.
it is a lot of syllables, yeah. And I'll just say this because I've had the conversation with my guests on my show. The most appropriate is just someone's name.
Perfect, right? Just
Yeah,
like someone's gender will be their pronouns and then their name.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. You know, and so and you definitely don't let that interfere with your life being so full. And we were discussing this off air because I'm 4'11. So
Yep.
for me, growing up in life, things in general, we know this, right? Things that are designed for the world in general
Yeah.
are designed for people who are like 5'4" and taller.
Yeah.
Or maybe even 5'4" to at least 5'11", because I think people that are super tall have their own issues.
Absolutely.
But I mean, for me, I mean, everything from sports to navigating a kitchen to doing, playing, and we were talking about instruments,
Yeah.
learning guitar. Things were just different for me, but for you, definitely at 4'4". So why don't we take it back? You mentioned in some of the information you sent me that you've been seeing specialists and have had surgeries since the age of 2, right? That you've seen specialists, you said.
Yep. When I was born, my parents didn't know that I was going to be a little person, and there was a little bit of a scramble for the first couple of years of my life to find a doctor that knew how to treat me.
Oh, wow. So then does it not really present itself as an infant until you
Oh
get to a certain age, and then that's where it
no,
starts to.
I'm 41. So when my mom had me, there were no ultrasounds. So that I just came out,
Yeah.
and when I was born, they automatically knew that there was something strange and odd. They didn't know exactly how to call it. But this the day after I was born, the doctor came in to see my mom, and she said, or the doctor said, he said to my mom, he will never run, he will never ride a bicycle, he will never be physically active. He has this condition that is going to restrict pretty much everything in his life. And my mom, being the strong person that she is, uh, in the moment didn't let it show, but that devastated my mom.
As a mom, I'm a mom, I can understand that wholeheartedly. It's,
Yeah.
and doctors, they they have to just give you a worst case scenario
Hmm.
and hope for the best. But doctors will always do that, right? They'll, especially the fact that you needed a specialist and there weren't any around or that knew, that's not a general practice for somebody with dwarfism.
Yes.
And so how long did it take before you could find doctors that could assist you and guide your mom with what you were needing as a child?
Yeah. My mom and dad are both very forward thinking. We're going to solve the problem in the best way possible. And it took them maybe a year or so. And we found a doctor in Baltimore, Maryland. His name is Dr. Kopitz. And my dad actually photographed me nude because and took the negatives to the the drugstore and said, listen, these are not for lewd purposes. These are photos of my son who needs medical care, and we're sending them to a specialist doctor to see if he can actually treat him. So
Oh, wow.
my dad sent photos of me to Dr. Kopitz and heard back from him and said, yes, I believe I can help your son. And at 2, we started to see Dr. Kopitz. And then, we developed a history, and because of his specialty in little people, he had seen symptoms and situations before then. And, he has done so much research in little people. And so he kind of set up a plan for me and knew that I was going to need reconstructive leg surgeries and then eventually a spinal fusion.
Wow. And
I
and
mean, brilliant guy. Like bedside manner and, medically, technically incredible. I'm so fortunate and so lucky to have known him and been treated by him.
So what you were diagnosed with was what you were born with is cartilage hair. Is it hypoplasia? Am I
That's
saying that
correct.
right? Okay.
Yes.
And so I'm guessing the first 2 years must have been really hard, not just you, but for your parents not really knowing how to, you not being able to vocalize what you're going through. And then now you have a doctor that does. What was it like for you from that moment when you were aware of what was going on? I mean, were you
Honestly,
scared? Were you?
at that age, I was just trying to be as cute as I possibly could. And I believe I succeeded.
Oh,
um,
look at that. So
hon-
something. Oh, go ahead.
but honestly, to answer your question, I didn't have pain. I wasn't exhibiting terrible symptoms. I think they probably noticed that in the 6 years uh, before my surgery, from 0 to 6, my legs started to grow in a way where they started to become bowed, and that's a very typical trait with people with dwarfism.
Do they know
And
why?
yes, so one of the first operation, one of the procedures was to create non-unions in my fibulas. So there are two bones in your lower leg.
Right, the
There's
fib and tib.
the fib and tib. The tibia is the weight-bearing bone. The fibula is the one that creates the joints. So my fibulas are not connected, and that was
Oh,
they
okay.
haven't been connected since I was 6, and so there's a gap. If you look at an X-ray,
Yeah.
they're spaced out. I'm trying to not do that in front of my face, but yeah. So that prevented the bones from growing faster than the tibia and creating the bow-legged scenario.
So I mean, because I have seen that, like, anytime you see anyone, a little person, whether in the news or on a TV show or even a movie, I have seen the bowed leg.
It's common. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very common.
Wow. To be honest, I wasn't sure if it was because proportionately you're top heavy for the length of your legs, right?
Mm.
On top of the fact that you just now explained it, where the fib isn't developing like
Yeah, the
as quick
fib
as, yeah.
the fib grows more quickly, and so that kind of throws it off. And some people don't exhibit those symptoms, and I say it in every single episode. I don't plan to, but it ends up in every single episode. Dwarfism is a mixed bag.
Is
There
it?
are the other the other individuals who have cartilage hair hypoplasia that I know of are much shorter than I am. They still have the fine hair that goes along with cartilage hair hypoplasia. My beard is very soft. The hair on my head is very fine, and like same on my arms and my legs.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, so it's a that symptom is piggybacked within the condition. Um, but I am the tallest one that I know. Obviously, it doesn't mean that there aren't others that are taller than I am or as tall, but it's very interesting, I guess, that our symptoms don't necessarily fall into proper containers, and there are over 200 different types of distinguishable dwarfism.
Okay. There's two types.
200.
Oh, 200. Oh my
Over 200.
gosh. I was going to say,
Over
because two
200.
didn't seem like the right number.
Yeah, there's over 200 different types of dwarfism.
Oh, wow. And you say you're pretty tall
For
for,
someone with my condition, and I guess,
yeah.
I mean, I I don't know. It's all relative, there's no, it's a mixed bag.
It sounds like it. Okay,
It,
so now going into, because all of that happening, you had the two leg surgeries, you had spinal fusion. Whoa. So why did they have to fuse your spine?
Another symptom of cartilage hair hypoplasia that was affecting me was scoliosis, and I had
Oh,
a 36 and a 34-degree curvature in my spine. And so they tried to correct it with prescribing a back brace.
yeah.
I hated the back brace. It didn't work, and I also kind of didn't wear it. So I just ended up having surgery. And so what they did is they can't completely straighten out your spine, because as you grow, your spinal cord, there are certain situations where you just can't get a perfectly straight spine,
Yeah.
but they straighten it as much as they can. They fuse each vertebrae. They take bone from your hip and put it in between each vertebrae, and then they set it with two rods and hooks attached to my spine. And I'm fused from T1 to L4, so it's a lot.
That's a lot. How long did it was the recovery? Because you were 17 at that point. I mean, you were already going through your what in your senior year of high school. So you've gone through school
Yep.
already after the two leg surgeries. But so were you having issues with your back prior to? Were you having to go to school with the brace and trying that out? I mean,
Yep. I was prescribed a back brace, I think, when I was 13.
oh my.
So 13 to 17, I wore a back brace.
So what was that life like for you? Because you said you're 41 now,
Mhm.
so that puts you at what the 90s in high
Yep.
school.
Yep. Exactly.
What was it like for you socially? Was it? Did you try out for sports? Did you go to drama? Like what were you doing?
I I did try out for basketball in junior high, which is so ridiculous.
Why?
Um,
Good for
well, just
you.
yeah, I mean, I tried out, and I can't run all for a game and stuff like
That's true.
that's not what
That's
I can
true.
do. I loved
But it's
basketball.
middle school. I mean, I
Yeah.
tried out and made the team in middle school,
Heck
and I
yeah.
lettered. So it's middle school.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's middle school, it is what it is and whatever. Um I I love skateboarding. I love skateboard culture, and so I just skateboarded all the time. I played basketball in my dad put a basketball hoop on a tree in my front yard. And
Yeah.
so I would play basketball in the driveway. It was lower, so I could still play, which was really cool. When I was younger. And I rode my bike all the time. Like I was very physically active and going out all over the place. And I also worked out a lot. I don't know why I got a workout bug in my butt when I was like in junior high, but I would work out every single night before bed for an hour.
Oh my gosh. Did you just have
Why?
all this probably you had a lot of energy to expel?
I had a lot of
You seem like you've got a lot of energy now, so I can't even imagine how much more you had in high school.
It's crazy. Yeah, I
So
had a
now
lot
did
of
that
energy.
inspire you to get into acting and become a stuntman? Talk about that.
So that just kind of happened in a way. I was playing music for a number of years. And that's the other thing. I fell into drumming and just I fell in love with drumming and music and learning all about that. The acting thing just kind of occurred when I was touring with a rock band for 6 years, and then I left, and then I moved to Hollywood with the intention of playing in more rock bands and getting back out on the road and touring and doing that life. And
So were you the only little person in the band, or was it there others, or
I was the only little person in the band. When I was playing in the rock band, I was the only little person that I knew until I was 30. There was
wow.
one little person that would come out to a couple of our shows, and she and I became friends, but I did not accept myself at that time. And I accepted a friendship with some significant, walls up, because I wasn't okay with myself. And I was touring in a rock band that was playing small clubs and big clubs and playing with some well-known bands and playing to no one as
I
well. Like,
saw your list.
yeah.
Iggy
And
Pop, My Chemical Romance, my goodness, Motion City soundtrack. Come on now.
we
That's
worked,
awesome.
we worked very hard for everything that we achieved. And that's the truth. And it was a full-time job, and we put our all into that band. And it was, you know, we got stuff that I felt like we deserved, and that was great. um and that was my focus, is how does this band go as far as it possibly can. And this is my life. I want to play drums. This is what I do. And that's what I came to Hollywood to do, was to I left my band. It was time for me to leave that band in Detroit, and I came to Hollywood, and I was auditioning for everybody, and trying to play music and doing that. And I I ended up getting booked on the Ellen DeGeneres show to play with a 9-year-old prodigy guitarist from Japan.
Stop it. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I think I know the 9-year-old prodigy. I watched her
Yuto
show
Miyazawa.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. 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 And you played with him?
Yeah, we played twice. One of my best friends is a Japanese.
There's got to be a video somewhere. You need to throw that my way when this is done. I want to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my best friends is a bass player who happens to be Japanese, and I called him and I was like, "Hey man, I have a potential gig for us." And it worked out that we ended up playing on the Ellen DeGeneres show twice with Yuto, and it was so fun. It was great. And I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, is playing drums on TV. And then 3 weeks later, I got called to work on a Universal Pictures film, and they wanted to move me to Santa Fe, New Mexico for the summer. And I almost didn't take the job. It was supposed to be a 3-month, on location job where I was standing in for a CGI alien character.
Okay.
And
Wait, a
and
TV show or a movie?
it's a movie.
Okay.
And I called a buddy of mine and I was like, this isn't music. Should I take this? And he's like, are you stupid? Like, what is wrong with you? A gig is a gig and you're living in LA. I had $7 in my bank account at that point. And so I was like, all right, a gig is a gig. And I went to New Mexico and worked on that show. And that opened my eyes to.
So what was the show, or what was the movie?
The movie is called Paul.
Okay.
It's Simon Pegg and Nick Frost were the leads and the writers. Kristen Wiig is in the movie. Jason Bateman, Joe Latrulia.
Shut.
It's a funny movie. It's great.
When did it come out?
I believe it came out in 2011.
I'm gonna have to look that up. Paul, like the name Paul.
The name Paul. Yeah,
Okay.
it's an alien character. He's on the cover, and I was the stand-in for the alien. And even this is how stubborn I am. While I was on the film, I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm going to go back. I'm going to take all this money and go back to LA and start auditioning again. And I don't want to become SAG. And then like halfway through my job on the film, I'm like, you're stupid, man. Like, when are you going to learn? So I ended up asking production if they would make me SAG, and I became union. They gave me a line on the film. And, I went back to Hollywood with this newfound confidence where, oh yeah, I can do music and I can do acting. Like, I can do these things. This is cool.
So I take it there was never a moment in your life, or was there a moment in your life where you would doubt yourself based on, you mentioned not meeting another dwarf person, another little person until you were 30. So did you ever at any time feel doubt?
Oh, absolutely. I was feeling so much doubt, but I didn't know that that's what I was feeling. Like I would just suppress it. You know what I mean? When you don't accept yourself and you find yourself in a situation where you're like, I'm going to put my hand out and keep you at arm's length because I am not okay with myself. That was my life. And I would do that around other little people. I'm an open-minded individual, and I went to one LPA as Little People of America. They have regional events and nationwide events. And I went to a regional LPA event in Detroit, and I left there early. I'm like, this is not me. This is not who I am. I am with musicians, and this is the musician thing. Like, maybe you can understand. You probably can understand this. Like, musicians and acting, like they see themselves as completely different performers, or at least
completely. I mean, I've done extra work on the sets, movies here, and then but I work mostly in the music industry, and I've played a bit, and it's a different community.
Yeah. So if a musician gets called to do an acting job, they're like, yeah, but I'm a musician. Like, I'm not an actor. That's not. It's very few that I know anyway that are like, yeah, I want to do an acting job. That sounds really, really cool. Like my folks from Detroit that I grew up playing with and the circles that I was in, at least in my opinion, I didn't see them as wanting to do acting work as well. They were hardcore musicians. They played music. That's how they created, and they were happy with that. I'm not speaking for everybody. That was my vision, and that's what I put onto myself. And so it was a huge rut to be in a band that was decently popular at least in Michigan and in Detroit, to like pull myself out of that and say, okay, I'm somebody else now and I can do other things, and that's okay. Like I was mentally like stuck.
Do you think any of that had to do with the fact that you are a little person and you were trying really hard to make sure to make an impact?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I realize, now more so now than I ever have, that I never wanted to see myself as different. I never wanted to see myself as somebody who has different needs or has different experiences or a different, just view of the world. I just wanted everyone to see me as equal to them, and I'm not. And that's even with
That's
just,
such a good point. You were trying so hard to compare yourself with people you would never be the same as because you're your own unique person.
yeah, and I tried to mold everybody else's opinion of me
Oh,
when
yeah.
like, you're going to exhaust yourself and kill yourself trying to do that. And it's still something I'm working on. Like, I've only worked in industries where image is hugely present and hugely
Yeah.
important,
Especially going
music.
to Hollywood.
Yeah, of course. And so trying to get yourself into a place where you just say, yeah, I accept who I am. And if other people don't, like, I would love to say that I've always just never cared about people's opinion. And I have said that before, but deep down, it's maybe my own opinion that I've been struggling with the whole time.
And Jillian's in the room. What's up, Jillian? I just saw her earlier today, by the way. In fact,
What's up, Jillian?
she gave me the shirt, Die Laughing Records. I've had both her and Dave, the founder, on this show back in September. It's been that long. So going back to this, when was your aha moment when you embraced who you were and you found that power? And because I found it, and it actually recently, believe it or not, in my 50s, but I found it, and all of a sudden I realized the weight that lifted and finding my self-worth and knowing that, and it wasn't an ego thing, it was a relief for me.
Yeah.
That I no longer needed to compare, contrast, and figure out who I was based on what society or what this group or what that, and realized there are people looking at me as an example. There are people looking to me for the inspiration I need to, and it didn't feel comfortable putting that pair of pants on because that's a responsibility in itself. And I'm thinking for you, that's Mondo.
Yeah.
I mean, drummer, surfer, stuntman, actor.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you discovered that drumming was your thing?
I mean, that was probably 15.
Okay. And do you still drum today?
I haven't drummed so much this year just because I've been moving around so much. But yeah.
Well, I call it BC, before COVID. So like before COVID, were you still drumming?
Absolutely. Yeah. I had a music studio in LA, and I had my drums set up, and I play the drum tracks on my podcast, like my intros and outros.
That's amazing.
They're just drum, like they're just drum beds, with like percussion and drum kit. It's just loops that I think are cool, and I'll just use those as my intros and outros.
That's so cool that it's your own. So have you had to play like on an altered kit or your stool or your sticks, or do you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I play regular sized drums, and I actually like playing bigger drums just because there's more air moving around and they sound bigger and they're cool.
Yeah.
It's taken me a little while to get comfortable with that because I play a 20-inch kit. My kit at home is a 20-inch kick with a 12-inch rack tom and a 14-inch floor tom.
Dang.
And I can tune them down. That was my touring kit too. Because we toured in a small van and I had to make stuff fit compactly, and I didn't want to carry a bunch of heavy stuff all the time.
And let's go into that because musicians are always having to carry their own stuff. Did you carry all your own stuff?
Yeah, I did.
See, all that working out. It's like the universe just knew we got to get Christophe in shape because he's going to become this drummer who's touring the world, and he's going to have to carry his own shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I've played on so many rentals that, weren't set up for me, and I have this crazy story about, I did an audition for P. Diddy's Making the Band.
Stop it. I know the show. Oh my gosh.
And I got through to the second round. I got a call back. And they had me come back, and there were about 40 drummers in the room, and everybody had 90 seconds to play. And that was it. And whenever I showed up to any jam session in Detroit, I had to bring a snare stand and a throne and my sticks so that the snare stand is like, it goes, I found a snare stand that goes super low, and I have a drum throne that goes super low so I can comfortably sit behind. And if like everything else, at least I can play a drum beat on a kick and a snare then. So I set my stuff up, and I was like, can I have like 2 minutes just to like lower some things? I didn't have the time. Like the rack tom was at eye level, and
Oh my gosh.
I'm playing the songs, and I'm like way up here, and the music director's like, all right, open it up, drummer, like air it out, and I'm like, I
That's not
can't,
fair.
I can't reach anything.
That's
I
not
can't even
fair.
reach the crash symbol, or the ride symbol is where my highest crash would be.
So they didn't give you the opportunity to make it fit for you.
No, I mean
That's
that
rude.
show was just like this, and everybody in there was almost 6 feet tall. So it
See what I'm
was,
saying?
yeah,
That's rude.
it was frustrating. And that was a little bit of a slap in the face in Hollywood, where I always felt like I could accommodate the situation. And that was one of the times where it hit me, and I was like, wow, I'm really not going to be able to handle every situation. I can't, make everything work for me. And I have to kind of accept some of these in a sense.
Knowing that you can't control every situation, that's like the biggest pill for anybody,
Yeah.
especially someone as driven as you, to swallow and accept. So then, okay, so there's drumming, there's the acting. Okay, BC, were you still acting?
Yes. Yeah. I
Okay.
worked on, I've done a lot of jobs for Jimmy Kimmel live, and I actually got to play in the band with Cleto and the Cletones.
That's amazing. What's that
Yeah.
like?
That's nerve-wracking, because I was doing a bit for Jimmy Kimmel, and they wanted to kind of spice it up a little bit, and they found out that I play drums, and Cleto was like, "Hey man, do you want to play tomorrow with the band?" And I'm like, yes, I do. And he's like, "Okay, cool." And then they didn't really say anything else about it, and I was like, I need to find out what song they want me to play, because I'm
Yeah.
gonna go and shed my pants off tonight. And they're like, "Oh, let's do uh oh god, I just forgot the song. Like, it's not Learning to Fly. It's a Foo Fighters tune." Um and I just went and shedded like crazy. Um and came back the next day and had rehearsal with them, and I was ready. Like, I charted out the song. I just like ran it 10 times or 15 times the night before, and came to rehearsal. And there's no lyrics when they play their intros and outros, so
Right.
you're just making sure the song. And those guys have played all those not only are they monsters who've played with the best in the business, that's the best band I've ever played with in my entire life, and they're the sweetest
Wow.
guys ever. But yeah, it was thrilling. It was so fun. And I didn't change anything on Jonathan's drum set, so I was like just like all over the place. It was cool to play that. But the one thing is I was dressed up in like crazy makeup, and if that was the only thing that was kind of weird,
Why were you in crazy makeup or just
because we were
stage makeup?
doing a bit. Yeah. And
Oh,
so they had yeah.
yeah, and it's live, isn't it? Recorded anyways?
It's
Or
live to tape.
okay.
So the audience was in there, and then yeah, they record at 5, and then they piece it all together.
Because I mean, it isn't like take and start over. Like you got to kind of run it anyways. It's a talk
No,
show.
and that is
That's the thing.
that the thing that was cool about that is I built a lot of confidence playing in the rock band and touring on all these stages. And
Yeah.
that was the thing that I was like, I've done gigs that are less high profile than this one. But I have to pull on the gigs that are like high profile, and that you have to just bring it. And that's, what I just really had to think of in that moment.
Man, that's so incredible. Look at you. See that? Now, and then, okay, so let's touch on your podcast because that is originally how we met. You started your own podcast built around the discussion of the little person and dwarf called I'm Kind of a Big Deal. That's a really clever name, by the way.
Thank you so
When
much.
did you launch that?
I launched it last year, about a year ago.
Okay. And how's it gone so far?
It's been great. You mentioned, steps in my life where I've come to terms with, or, have accepted myself. The podcast is probably the biggest step, because I was encouraged to talk about my life and all the jobs that I've done. And, um, how crazy things have been in my world. But as soon as I started to talk about that, I shared it with some friends, and they expressed such similar sentiments that I'm like, this isn't about me. Like, my story will come out however it comes out, no big deal. Um, but like, all of these people who have bottled up their feelings and their emotions, and they haven't found the place to share this. I feel like my goal is to provide a platform for people to share the vulnerable things and the shameful things and the funny things. Like, my show is not this boring thing that's, you're going to get educated in little people. Yeah, you're going to get educated, but you're going to hear some crazy stories along the way.
Do you want to
And
share one?
um
Whether
yeah,
it's yours or someone's, you don't have to put a name, but please
yeah,
educate us on that.
one
Because
of my guests, notable guests, she had an eating disorder at 6, which is extremely tragic and extremely difficult to navigate. And she had to go to rehab for a couple of times for her addictions. And she tells a story about how in one of her drunken nights that kind of, was the light bulb, or contributed to the light bulb going off, that she needed help. She ended up on a military base with 12 servicemen and their superior, and then narrowly avoided getting arrested the next morning on the base when she was attempting to leave.
oh my,
She's 3 feet tall as well.
oh my. So
Yeah,
she's little. That's
she's
what
very,
you meant by you being kind of tall for being a dwarf at 4'4". She's 3 feet.
she's 3 feet. Yeah.
Oh my.
And she's, I need to also say, she is an incredible success story, because not only has she lived through all of these trials and tribulations and these very just struggling times in her life, she's now sober. She's hugely positive about her body and the skin that she's in. She produces dance videos and puts them out on Instagram and TikTok, and she has over 1.5 million followers. She's a total inspiration, and she's absolutely incredible. And it just goes to show, like, you can have these extremely dark times where people are going to judge you, and they're going to say these things and say, like, oh, you're in this place, and who knows if you'll ever get out of there. But it's a testament, and it's this light that I think that little people specifically bring to the conversation and to society, that these stories are incredible, and they need to be heard, and they are often looked over. And I just think that hearing a human voice say these things and share their experiences is just so important.
Absolutely. Would you say that, being in your 40s now, when you grew up, internet wasn't a thing. You
Absolutely.
mentioned not knowing, not even meeting another dwarf person until you were 30. Has the internet really, in a positive way, opened up that door and to see how many just like you, right?
It has it's been positive and it's been negative, because it also perpetuates the stereotypical roles or the misconceptions that people have about little people. But also, when you log in and you see little people who are joking about their situation in an educational but matter of fact way, in a way that they own it, and it shows you that they have personality, and that their struggles don't completely knock them down and cause them to be less than in society. I think that those accounts and those posts are huge, to see. And then there are little people who are incredible business people that are out there, and I interviewed a gentleman who is a CFO and a mind-blowingly talented pianist, who should have hard of hearing and hard of sight, but he is so incredibly talented at piano. It is mind-boggling. And he's the CFO of his company.
That blows my mind, because piano, there's another thing, goes with the fingers, right? And playing the different keys and the chords, and wow.
He can barely span an octave, and he has to catapult himself from one side of the keyboard to the other, you will never hear it. It's absolutely incredible what he does and how he plays piano.
So for you, I was going to say, with your show's been around for about a year. How many people would you say you've connected, not just having as guests, but having people log into the show or follow your Instas and your websites? What kind of door has that opened for you with meeting and connecting with other little people?
So we were talking about, getting over the weight of yourself and
Yeah.
how to, like, you asked me what those moments were.
Yeah.
It's not just there are moments along the way, but the whole darn thing is a process, and putting out the podcast has been a process, because I would create in my head from these bad thoughts or these things that were just polluting my mind. Oh, this person that I know is probably going to think this about my show, and that's not good. And this other
Yeah.
person, because I know them, they're going to think this. And should I even put this out there? Like, it's not worth it. Is it worth it? I don't know. The opposite is happening. Like that stuff, I've had to work really hard to just silence that and put that away. But the response that I've had from family and friends and new friends and people who, I'm having hour-and-a-half long conversations with folks who are like, bro, I've never thought of this before. I've actually made fun of little people. I didn't know that I could ask this of you. Now I want to know more about you. Now I want to engage. Now I want to support. Now I want to, always have this involvement with you and these stories. And it's amazing. It's so cool.
Oh my gosh. So then my mind, I want to ask the right questions, because as we go to wrap this up in like the next 5 or 10 minutes, but
they're all right questions.
I just, because my mind went to how people are, and this is an irritating thing for me when people bring this up, but there are those that say everything's too PC and everybody's just too sensitive. And my thought goes to, or everything that you did was absolutely from being misogynistic and being racist and being a bully, and you thought it was okay to frame it as humor, but it's not. And these people are now speaking up. So as a little person, have you found a shift in that? Because you just mentioned someone who said, I've always said this.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and this is where, and I bring up comedy, right? So before the internet, you would go to a show, or you would buy it, or you would rent it. You still had a marginal audience, right? Because I know anytime I would go to a comedy show, they would say right up front, things are going to be said. They might be offensive. If you get offended, you're welcome to leave, but just know you're not going to get a refund. Okay, cool, whatever. But now you can stream this stuff everywhere. Like I used to drive, I would listen to comedy on Pandora, and I'm like, some of this stuff is like, this is reaching everybody who's getting offended. You know what I'm saying?
Yep,
and
absolutely.
that comes with dwarfism. That comes with joke. Like people used to say to me, and they would joke because I'm short. Have you ever thought of suing the city for what? For building the sidewalk so close to your ass. Okay, so that's funny, but at the same time, it's at my expense.
Yeah.
At what point is the humor, right, not at someone's expense? Did you find that humor was often done at your expense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it still is. I still get calls for event jobs and acting jobs that are, saying, let's put you in an elf costume, or let's make you into an Oompa Loompa. Let's
stereotyping. Let's cast typing.
Let's put you into this character where we don't have to know who you are, but we're going to perpetuate this image of little people. And I did that for a while, and I got paid really, really well to do it. And then you ask yourself, why am I getting paid so well to do this? Like, oh yeah, because it's not representing me in a good light, and it's, diminishing myself in society. And I think, it takes a while for some people, for me, it's taken me a while to accept the fact that, there are these, I don't want to think that society doesn't have my back, or doesn't want me to be an actual person, or wants to just see me as a guy, with friends and family and relationships and sad times and good times and successes and struggles and all these other things that don't necessarily pertain to my limbs being short.
Correct.
And it's it's this thing. It's still perpetuated in media. I can still find videos from 2 or 3 years ago where they're saying, "What's so bad about saying the word midget? What's so bad about that? Like, I don't think I should not be able to say that. Like, come on." And
because they
I
put it on themselves. It comes back to they need to feel comfortable around you, and that's such a back asswards thing to come about with. I
Mhm,
deal with that with being Filipino. I deal with that with being queer. You
mhm.
know, it's like, why do I have to pay attention to your pronouns? Because they're mine.
So
And if
I
you want to address me, they are she, her,
let let
right?
me let me ask you a question, because what what I have is, do you agree with me that those are defense mechanisms for misunderstanding? Or
Yes,
is it just
but I
like
think it's loaded.
rude?
I think it's not just misunderstanding. I think for people, it becomes this trigger that they realize, but I went my whole life. Does this mean my whole life I was an asshole and no one told me? This is fucking embarrassing, but I'm just learning this in a fraction of a second. So I'm just going to turn this and be defensive about it. That's what I
Mhm,
think it is. Because you can do one of two ways. You can tell me, I'll catch myself and go, oh my God, I've been saying that my whole life.
mhm.
Own it and go, thank you for letting me know. Because all this time I didn't know. Or I can go, fuck you. I've been saying it my whole life. What's your problem?
Yeah,
Right. It is defensive, but defensive why?
yeah.
So I agree with you, but I think it's more than just that.
Because
Yeah.
of learned experiences.
Yes. And they think
Yeah.
just because we learned it, I'm like, so, like the whole thing. So you're an actor. I know you think of yourself more of as a musician, definitely, but you've been acting. Have you had roles where your height wasn't the issue and you actually had a role as a person? You just happened to be a little person.
Um, very few. Um, and to be honest, even if I said yes, I don't know that I actually know the entire story. And so they might, you know, as an actor, you know what is put in front of you, at
Right.
least in the roles that I've been given. And it's not, I'm not in the writer's room. I'm not in the production meetings. I get called when there's a job for me and they say, we're going to pay you this to do this. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm free that day. Let's do it. So I think there are times when I have been led to feel that way, that, yeah, we want you as just a guy. Um, and that might be true, but there have been so many more situations where it's like, no, 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 we want you because you're 4'4", or you're bald, or you you
And
look
that's a
proportionate.
separate thing because often when people are making a movie or designing it, they'll figure on a gender, they'll figure on a culture, on a race, and that can factor into it as well. A couple
Yeah.
of people in the chat room, by the way. So Jillian had a couple of things she wanted to say. She thinks that now we are finally aware and can navigate carefully about people and allowing them to progress on their own, which I understand that, but to a point, and I'll get to that in a second. And then she had a question for you. What do you think of Elf the movie and the position of comedy that movie took?
I I haven't seen Elf in a while. I know Peter Dinklage is in the film, and he has, a moment where he's running across the table, and I don't find that funny. Um, because I feel like there are so many portrayals of dwarfs in media that we're supposed to be angry and nobody understands why we're angry, and we have this chip on our shoulder for all of these reasons. And um I I don't know. I
It,
don't.
it, it becomes a gimmick.
It's a gimmick. It's a it's furthering a
It's not
stereotype
fair.
in
Yeah.
my opinion. Maybe I would have to go back and watch it again to absolutely like know my like the true answer, but from what I think right now, that's what I remember from that. A movie that does capture the the experience of a little person and features Peter Dinklage in a brilliant role is The Station Agent. And
Okay.
that movie is known as Peter's breakout film, and he is playing this role where he's a sad guy, but he's just a guy, and he's lonely, and he's dealing with a loss. And when I saw that film, I mean, my jaw just dropped. I couldn't believe that somebody else was able to portray my experience on a screen, because I had never seen that before. And I was like, there's so much that's happening. And holy crap, he kisses Michelle Williams. Oh my God. That's like, there's a little person that got to kiss Michelle Williams.
That's
And
amazing.
it's amazing. And, you know,
He's highlighted for his acting and not because he's little.
yeah. And I mean,
Who just happens to be little.
in Elf, he was playing a comedic role, and you know, he is supremely talented. And I don't, you know, claim to be an actor next to Peter at all. But you know, there's sometimes I think that you get into roles, and there's a barrier to entry in Hollywood, and that to me is very real. And you know, I have played a role. I played a murderer on Twin Peaks.
Okay, yeah, because I saw on your list that you've been in Insidious 4 and you were in Twin Peaks. So you were a murderer?
I'm a hitman on Twin Peaks. And that role, I've always been a David Lynch fan, which his movies are incredible. And I love his style. And before I even was considered for the role on Twin Peaks, I loved David. And to get to play a hitman and a murderer is cool, but to do it with David Lynch and to do it with, you know, no prosthetics on my face. I had very little makeup and I had messed up teeth. And that was because the hitman's character was a short, stocky guy who had messed up teeth. You know, I felt validated.
Like any guy could have had messed up teeth. It had nothing to do with you being a dwarf. So that
absolutely. And I wasn't like, oh, I'm a little like murderer. It was like, no, I'm a serious guy who's going to destroy you right now. And that's who my character is. And it was, as exhausting as the role was, it was so satisfying and gratifying. And I'm so humbled to have been a part of that production. And thank you for letting me toot my horn.
That's amazing. Congratulations on that. So there was another question by David. He wanted to know what's the proper way, midget or little people, because he gets yelled at. And that's a good question. I posted it up there earlier. You mentioned little person or dwarf.
Mm-hmm.
You had a longer word. What was
short-statured.
Short-statured, which is a lot of syllables. But so little person and dwarf is not considered a slam or a derogatory term.
It isn't. You know, I feel like the jury is out, because the labels, you know, are labels, and they just define someone. I think if you want to be PC, and I don't know, like, PC is what it is, you know. I swear with my friends and I don't say all the right things all the time. Like, I am not, but I catch myself, and because I don't have the intent of calling someone an offensive word. And I think that for me, that plays into it, like having the intent of actually calling, like not wanting to educate yourself, or, you know, want to call. And I'm not saying that this individual, you know, isn't trying to educate themselves, or, you know, I appreciate the question greatly. And I think it's a tough question to ask, because there's so much taboo. And
but so here's the thing.
Midget is offensive because it relates to little people being subjected to circus work and being,
there you go.
What is it? I think a midge is a sand flea or something like that. And so midget is equating an individual to a tiny insect in, you know, olden terms. And that hasn't gone away. I mean, there are TV shows that still use the word midget like it's any other word.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't equate also on other levels, because I have heard arguments that saying the M word, as little people will call it, is the same as saying the N word, which is not the same.
No.
They both are offensive to the people that you're referring to, and to people that you're not referring to. But, you know, I think the appropriate way to say it is, I was taught recently, is, you know, Christophe is an individual who happens to have dwarfism.
And you even mentioned it before. Just say your name. Why? Yes. See, you're on the show because we are talking about you being a little person, because you have a podcast. But when you and I met, see, here's a perfect example. When you and I met, which was the Podcast Movement Conference, which was online, I had no idea until you told me. And that was fine, because we were connecting as fellow podcasters. So even when I meet you, I think the only time it would matter is if I have a child with me and the child sees you for the first time and you're
Yes.
the first little person they've ever met. I'm going to educate them properly. Say he is an adult, but he was born shorter. And
Yes.
the term would be little person or dwarf, but he's an adult like mom.
Yep.
That would be a moment. Other than that, I'm like, Christophe, good to meet you. Shake your hand. Done.
So
I'm not going to tell you I'm Filipino. I mean, I'm only going to tell you I'm queer if you're a woman. I'm trying to date you. But let's be real. I'm Myki. I'm Christophe. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's really all it should be.
Yeah. No, and that is a huge topic because the problem is with the parents. It's with the adults. It's not with the kids. The kids are curious and
Yes.
they should be curious. If a kid comes up to me and asks me why I'm so little, I will tell them.
Yeah.
And
He's being honest.
And if they aren't tainted and they're just inquisitive and their parents haven't made fun of little people or people with disabilities or people who look differently or are of a different race or whatever else it is that makes them different from what they perceive is the same, kids are the easiest ones to get along with. They are so accepting, and I'm instantly friends with kids of all ages. And I was a drum teacher. I taught drums to kids for a number of years, and they would come over to my mom's house where I was teaching because I was living in my mom's house while I was on tour with my rock band.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens. And they would come over.
Musicians are usually the starving musician.
It's how it goes.
On a couch.
Exactly. There you go. Another secret. But they would come over and say, there would be a question, why are you so little? And then the next week when they would come over, it wasn't like, why are you so little again? I forgot. It was like, all right, I've been working on this drum thing and I have a problem. Or like, can you show me that thing that we did last week? Cause I forgot about it. Or like, I've worked on all my stuff. Like, it wasn't like, oh,
well, the focus went back on
little?
them. Yeah. Their focus went back on them and them learning and you as their teacher.
Yeah. And, and if you're open about it, I've talked to people who are just, it's a difficult thing to handle. It's because it's funny and it's weird. I'll just share this quick story because I know you're wrapping up, but like little kids will see me. And one time there was a little kid who saw me and I had a beard like this and I was by myself and getting groceries in a store. And this little kid said, "Mommy, why is that little boy all alone?" And it was 8:00 at night and I had a full beard. And, it's probably a 7-year-old kid, but, they're just innocent and curious and they don't know what to say. But think about what happens if you say, don't look at that person. You shouldn't be.
Don't stare.
Then it's like, it's this instant thing of like, ooh, I shouldn't. I can't.
What's wrong with that person? Exactly.
What's wrong with that person? Yeah. And like, then that's where I call the misunderstanding into defense mechanisms. Then I'm going to make fun of you.
There you go.
That's how I draw that.
I went the because he was so concerned for your safety and
yes,
he literally empathized with you. He put himself in your place. Like, what would happen if I were by myself in an aisle and it's dark? Like, you know what I'm saying? That was so heartwarming.
It's super cute. I have a bunch of stories like that and I love them. They're so great.
I swear, we as adults can learn from children every effing day. I do my best because I love instructing young people.
Yes.
The youth, especially. I mean, I did martial arts for many years growing up because my family has their own school. Thank you. From the time I was 6 until like in my 40s. And I loved instructing the young ones because there's just something.
They're open. They're
very open and they don't understand failure yet. So as an instructor, you're never going to fail in my eyes. You're going to try something and it might work for you and you might flourish in it, but it's, you know what I'm saying? Like, the word fail is so hard on a kid, in my opinion.
I was just listening to a show that I'm so happy you brought this up. Like, this is so important. Yeah. Life is failure. Life has failure, It does, but that word is just so heavy. Like, it took me a while to embrace it, to know that I'm learning from something I don't quite understand yet. Yes.
So with kids, I mean, I remember my little story. So in the school that we train in, you learn dances, we'll call them dances, like forms.
Mhm.
You go up for your ranks. You have to know certain forms. You have to know certain tricks, certain defense mechanisms, and so he's stuck on this one move. This one dance he can't get down because he's trying to go up for his yellow belt or something. And I'm told, bring him to the side and show him. And I said, you're going to get through this. You can do this, and I believe in you. Let's do this. Because he was getting scared, and I can see his anxiety. He's like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get. He's like 9,
Yeah.
and I said, you've got this. I said,
Yeah.
breathe. You're like, breathe. I
Yeah.
promise you've got this. Watch. We're going to go this one at a time, and you're going to totally get this.
Yeah.
And take because he was getting in his own way. Because that's what we do. We carry that from kids to adults, and it takes adults like you and I who are instructors to breathe, to believe in a child. It's like failure is fine, but don't let it cripple you.
Yeah.
And so, and I can't even imagine. You must have gone through so much of that. Even, just for, like you said, growing up but not knowing what it was, your parents struggling, finding a doctor, and to the point to where all of a sudden you're like, I am me and I'm awesome and done. Right.
I think I started out at that. I think I started out because my parents were really so supportive of me, and they never said that there was anything that I couldn't do. They never said, oh, you're going to be too small to do that. They're like, no, try skateboarding. No, you're going to swim. No, ride a bike. No, like do all this other stuff. That's totally cool. Play basketball in the front yard. Absolutely. Do all these things. So I was there, and then I dipped in probably my 20s to 30s. I think like college time, I had a dip of that, and probably wasn't so self-conscious, self-confident. And it peaked again in my late 30s and my mid to late 30s, and came out. Here I am now,
and here you are, like
doing whatever I'm doing,
whatever you're doing.
But that's the process. You never know what it's gonna be, and you just have to roll with it and do whatever you can.
Yeah. And we're going to go through that. I think the biggest thing that, like, you're talking about when you're doing with kids or even as adults growing up, the important part is we as individuals have to figure out if we're going to fail at something, and if we pick ourselves back up and learn it. Adults shouldn't already put it on the kid. You're going to fail, or don't do that because you can't do that. Let them figure that out.
Yeah.
Let them figure that out.
Yeah.
Let them figure out if this is something they shouldn't do, can't do, or going to excel at. You never know.
I'm going to leave that to you because you are the experienced mother, and I do not have kids. So I've only
instruct.
I instruct. Yeah. But I think it's different when you just see a kid for a half hour a week or something.
You'd be surprised. Don't even, I'm going to stop you. Do not sell yourself short. If you've ever remembered having a teacher that you only saw, especially if they were your period 3 teacher that you saw for 40 minutes, and it might've been 5 days a week. I have carried through my life teachers that have done things for me I will be out of school for 10 years. And I can tell you, Jan Rudeski, my college prep English teacher in 9th grade. I'm going to get very serious here before we end this. I'm going to be very open. Okay.
Yeah.
Right before I got into high school, I was in foster care for 8 months because my father physically and sexually abused me.
Oh my God.
At 13. So I was taken away from him.
I'm so sorry.
Well, thank you. But I mean, so when I got into high school, I failed miserably at all my classes. I couldn't focus. I was getting zeros.
Mm-hmm.
And this teacher she knew something was wrong. She didn't ask me what was wrong, but she reached out to me and she believed in me. And I went from getting zeros in the beginning of the semester to getting A's by the time I graduated. Right. Because she believed in me.
Yeah.
And I would go back even after I graduated, and I would visit her and I would tell her how I was doing. So I'm telling you, you are an incredible instructor who is teaching the impact you leave. Kids are going to grow up and they're going to remember you. So don't sell yourself short. I know that's a bad pun, but don't sell yourself short, Christophe. You know what I'm saying? You are making that difference.
No. And I have, there are some students that I've had that with over the years, and it is really incredible to know that you've reached out and helped someone or touched them in a way. And that's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then on that note,
I'm so glad you had that teacher in your life. That's really cool.
oh my gosh, teachers, instructors, guidance,
Yeah.
you won't always get it at home. Lucky to those that do, but there's always going to be an adult that's going to look out for you.
Yeah.
And you're one of them, Christophe. I want to thank you so much for taking the time. This was a lot of fun. And your fire is out. You must be freezing. So
I gotta put a log on pretty quickly.
You do, because you're in a cabin out in the snow. You got bears on your porch.
No, this conversation got me warmed up, so I'm all my blood's pumping. This is good.
We're gonna stay connected.
Yeah.
Everybody, this is Christophe. He has his own podcast. I'm kind of a big deal. Please stalk him. You can see the ticker. There's his website. Check him out. He is the bee's knees. And
I'm very stalkable.
He's very stalkable. And thank you so much for those in the chat room that had really great questions and comments. Like I say on every show, remember every day that you wake up, you determine how your day will go. So we're going to do our best to manifest the last 2 weeks of 2020 and wish everybody a great rest of your evening. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.